Second.
We're
And
now
it's just
recording.
loading the line.
Yeah.
I will let you know in just a second. And we're all set.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to our work session of December 8th, preparatory to our meeting next Wednesday night. And for the folks at home, this is a work session, not a meeting. So applicant items are kept to a review of the file so we understand what's coming up, but we do not deliberate them. Of course, the applicant and anyone else is welcome to watch. And then we move on to administrative items, which will take most of our time tonight. If you're at home watching, thank you, because we really do appreciate public participation. Thanks, commissioners, for being here. And we've had some annual turnover. I understand we have a new commissioner, but she's not yet with us. If she joins, that'd be great. If not, we will see her for the meeting. We've got one applicant issue to discuss tonight. Grecian Point Road had a substantially revised application for our last meeting in November. We've now had a little more time with the application. Which just to refresh everybody's recollection, reduced the amount of fill, still includes a septic. What if anything do we have that's new? I didn't see anything new on the agenda. I don't know of any additional papers that have been submitted on that. Is there anything new that we expect? And that's a question for planning. Is there anything we expect to get in that would help us complete our deliberations on that?
Not for the upcoming meeting. We did receive a letter from the applicant's attorney requesting that the public hearing be adjourned to the meeting in January.
Oh, well, that's important. I was not aware of that. Okay, I must have missed that. They're off until the January agenda. So that changes the timeline. In the meantime, if we know that we are looking for something that we have not seen yet, now is the time to tell them, and I'm sure that Ms. Motel or Mr. Joffrey is monitoring or has somebody else doing so. So they will know, and if not, we can always have staff communicate with the applicant that there's something we're looking for. The main question that I have in my mind. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm looking for that I think we more or less requested or formally requested was some analysis on the sewer versus septic. I know we discussed it a lot, but I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, that we had really asked for some more in-depth information as to where the sewer lines actually are, what would be some problems running a new one, that type of thing.
Yeah, Andrew, there was a letter uploaded that, I mean, there are new files on this application. Okay. And there's one that was uploaded yesterday that's dated November 18th, 2020, I guess, that has a breakdown of the sewer and septic system. Is that a new letter, or is that?
No, that was Brian's letter. That was the day before the last meeting.
Okay.
We had that in time for the last one.
Gotcha.
That was the last thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff up on Novus agenda on this matter. None of it is since the last meeting. The last dated item I have, and please, somebody at planning correct me if I'm missing something. The last dated item I think we have is Brian's memo about sewer and septic.
Yep.
It goes through about 3 pages and explains the various options. Yep. I don't think, other than recapping our conversation with Mr. Joffrey from last time, including help me help you. They know there's things they could do that would help us complete our deliberations. Other than that, I think we know that we're hyper focused on one issue that basically drives all the other stuff. The question is whether it is really necessary to have fill in a floodplain here, and the closely tied question whether it's really necessary to do this house with a septic, or there is a better sewer option some way. There we are. I don't know of anything else that's going to change my deliberations that we expect or that we know to ask for now. If anybody else knows of something that you think you should ask for now, if we tell them now, they'll have it.
Yeah, can I just ask for a link to that Novus agenda, Grecian document center there? Can somebody from the staff send that to me?
Yeah, I can resend the link to the Novus agenda.
Please, thank you.
I'm having trouble with the Grecian point section of it. If I click the view attachments button, I think I can see some of these items, but usually it presents a little bit easier, and for some reason it's not working for me. Yeah, I have nothing new. Everything that I'm looking for has been discussed. So, there's still the Westchester County Department of Health approval of the septic system. There were open items in the Kellard Sessions memo. We had talked about the floodplain erosion due to tree removals and net fill, and whether they might bring an environmental expert in to comment on those impacts. But we had discussed all those. I'm just reiterating in case they're watching and it's helpful.
Thank you. Okay. So 1165, we will see at January, not at next week. And that's fine. We'll all have plenty of time to refresh on the issues. And I think we pretty much understand what it is we're deciding here. We may just have to decide it. Administrative actions. The first one up is proposed Lwrp. There's been some staff turnover in planning, but we were hoping at some point very soon to be able to, and thank you to Seamus on the work session last time for sort of narrowing this down. We had hoped to be able to just start whacking up the work. Where do we stand on that?
So before the staff comments, and I think they're probably driving it for the most part, I have to say that I've been busy enough that I haven't made the progress I wanted to make. Perhaps I still can kick a few things off between now and our meeting with Martin. So Martin, sorry about that. But I'm really no further along than I was at our last meeting. Apologies for that.
I've been in exactly that position before, and I totally understand.
Yeah, no problem. Just email me, let me know.
Yep, I do have the plan from before. I just need to start executing it. So sorry for that.
No worries.
Okay, planning. Do we have any movement forward on the staff end?
I haven't received copies of the changes discussed at the last meeting, but I'm happy to help Amber with that.
I think what we expected, I think what we had discussed coming from the staff side was to lay out, William had shown us an email with some points in it. And I think the plan was to lay out deadlines, a timeline for completing those, to kind of give us a map and a timeline to taking it to completion. And that might be the type of thing where if it's not prepared now, and I don't know the workload, but that it seems like that could be something put together before our next meeting, just because that really is just action item and a date by which, it might be able to be addressed or progressed.
Sure, we can definitely work on that. Seamus, can you make sure that I was copied on that email or the plan?
Well, it was screen shared at our last meeting. And it might have even been like a Microsoft Word document, or maybe it was an email. But I think we could find it on the video because it was, I think, static for long enough that was probably, just pause it. I don't think I've seen it in email.
Okay. You can take a look for that.
Okay, so I think that brings us to proposed amendments to wetlands, and I have that. I'm in exactly Seamus's position. It's been a week, and it's been not the first of them. So that really is on me to go through it and make sure that the version we're going to vote is the last and final that incorporated everybody's comments, and we're not missing a definition. I meant to have that done I think I will have that circulated Monday. I'd hope to have it for this work session, and I just don't. I'm hoping to have that circulated Monday. So we'll all have a chance to look at it, and we'll vote it at the upcoming meeting on Wednesday. That's the last thing. I think we all know what we think. We just need to make sure we didn't drop anything out in a version change. Item C, proposed amendments to the tree ordinance. I think this is really a carryover. We've given our comments in the letter to the Board of Trustees. I think they got our comments. They understand our comments. I don't think they're looking for more input unless the staff has something to tell us now. I think ball's in their court.
Should
Nothing
we
new.
should we take it off of our agenda? I'm just thinking of people who might tune into our meeting to find out that we're not planning to discuss it.
Right. Yeah, citizens who are really concerned with the tree ordinance. And this one raises some hackles.
And-
People are very concerned that it involves intrusion into private property. We're not going to discuss it. We've given our guidance, and that's at the Board of Trustees now. So that can come off the meeting agenda. The outfall jetty. That was discussed at the Board of Trustees in executive session. And when they came back from executive session, they announced that a letter was going out to our county legislator asking the county to work with us on this project. I assume that was sent in accordance with the Board of Trustees direction.
I can verify that for you tomorrow, Commissioner Burt.
Terrific. So at some point, in theory, they're going to contact us and say, okay, what do we need to resolve here? And I think Andrew has been admirably moving the ball on that and is ready to discuss, and I'll back him up. And I don't think, unless we actually end up having new news on that, I don't think we're going to end up discussing that at the meeting either. We're waiting for the county on that. Item E, proposed village Board of Trustees consistency determination for East Prospect and Waverly Avenue Community Development Block Grant. There are two block grant issues that we've been asked to weigh in on for purposes of upstream consistency by other bodies. There were letters for each one in our packet. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at them. So one of them, probably the simpler one in my view, is that on Waverly Avenue and on Prospect, the curbs and the sidewalks are in poor condition. Years ago now, the village put those in as grant items for infrastructure upgrades, and they have consistency facing issues in that the curbs and walkways are part of how we drain our stormwater, and those are key stormwater issues, and also the walkability of the downtown and that stuff. The county wants us to weigh in on consistency and our policies so that they can make sure that they're in line with our views of our policies. And they asked us, these have been around for a while, but they just came to us for this meeting. One of those letters asks us to have it done by December 20. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, and because this is a village project, the board has to make the determination, but obviously you are the board that deals with the LWRP, and you provide advisory opinions to the Board of Trustees on this matter. But I mean, you've described the crux of the project exactly. This is repairing dilapidated sidewalks and curbs.
So we have to, in order to get them guidance in a timely fashion, we really have to discuss the substance of it now, and then somebody's going to have to take that away and write a letter. The easier one, I think, is the sidewalk block grant. Looking at it, the only thing that I think it really raises is to make sure that they're consistent with the stormwater manual in their construction process. There's no drainage benefit to having buckled sidewalks or curbs. That's a detriment. Having them back the way they're supposed to be is an advantage. So the only thing that I think faces our policies is that in doing the job, they don't worsen a sedimentation problem. But that should be as simple as following their own manual. And I think basically what I envision is a letter telling them we see no consistency problems, except that construction must be done consistent with best practices for stormwater, and doing that would be following the state manual.
Yep.
That's about all I had intended to write, but I want to hear everybody else's views.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's the way I was seeing it as well, is that, I mean, there really aren't plans to review or any of those other kind of things. So it's really just as long as whatever they are constructing conforms to the policies, then it would be consistent.
I think one of the items that was forwarded to you, I predicted that this was a question that you would see kind of ask the county to opine, because ultimately the county will be doing the design on the project. And Suzette Lopane, who works for the county, said with regard to possible environmental considerations, she has the following comments: the projects are not intended to increase impervious pavement, and where it is possible for us to add a grass strip along the curb line, we will attempt to do that. They need to maintain a 5-foot width for sidewalks for ADA accessibility. And then they talk about there should be some flood benefits, not directly CDBG funded, but as a result of the Waverly Avenue Bridge replacement, that would likely reduce flood impacts in the area to begin with. But I did do my due diligence on that item. I asked the county to opine, and they did provide a response to that.
Well, if they can add a grass strip, that's like putting in a rain garden along the side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tight area. I mean,
Yeah.
Washingtonville is a tight area, as you all know. But we'll do our best, and it's kind of like a catch-22, as Commissioner Hayne mentioned. We don't have any design plans because they need to have a consistency review and a signed contract with us in order to begin design, and they can't even give us a contract until consistency is done. So there's a lot of things that interact here that prevent us from having any sort of design at this point.
Well, we should be able to move this forward very quickly. We'll give them our views of consistency so that we can.
Yeah.
So now,
just one quick thing to add, if that's okay. And tell me if I'm missing anything. I do think that we have gotten very little information, but Dan, thanks, because that was helpful, obviously, to have preempted that. But if you guys agree, I think we've gotten very little information on a project that's going to occur pretty close to 2 streams or rivers here. Waverly with probably the Shellbrook, I guess, coming in and then getting close to the Mamaroneck River on East Prospect Ave. So I would expect to have seen a lot more information for us to really do what we typically do. What I would maybe add to what we've mentioned so far, if we're going to write a letter, is that during construction, we would expect, typical or maybe even above typical care to be taken of all of the, construction trash and piling and wherever they're going to keep their materials, just to make sure that there's, doesn't cause any pollution type issues during the projects with the proximity to the rivers. And
right.
And
with silt fencing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can kind of address that a little bit. So, It's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to do CDBG projects. Obviously, everyone is aware of the unpleasantness that happened over the last decade between Westchester County and HUD, which basically uh, HUD took away CDBG funding from the Westchester County Consortium. The village of Mamaroneck was one of the biggest losers in that because um, we were not one of one of the eligible communities when being the eligible communities were the communities that hadn't done the right things like the village did. So we were the big losers in all that. Um, but in the past, when we've had projects, we've always worked out a location for where they can store materials. We've ensured that they are able to remove those materials on a timely basis. For instance, the last major project we did was in 2011 when we did sidewalks on Old White Plains Road and Mamaroneck Avenue between the railroad bridge and I think up to about Grand Street. And in the midst of that, Hurricane Irene happened, so we didn't have any issues with stuff getting lost or blown away or damaging anything else. So we were able to work with the contractors, have a good location, get everything done.
Martin?
Yeah, quick question. So are we able to also maybe Seamus, you were talking about during construction, but is there any way for us to just review things before construction starts, like just to make sure that everything's complying? Because I agree. I mean, that's basically was my opening statement too, is that these letters don't really provide a lot of information. And normally we're reviewing plans to really see like how consistent things are to all the different codes. So it would seem to me like even if it is a village project, that plans need to be made and those plans need to be approved. So why wouldn't they also have to go through our normal process that a homeowner would have to go through?
Yeah, Martin, I wanted to address the sidewalks thing because I thought, it was discreet enough that we sort of understood exactly what that was, but that was where I was going with the second one. In addressing the work done on the exterior of the two residences, like basically we're going to have to write explaining what our process looks like and saying, we can handle this really efficiently, but you have to actually show us what you're doing so that we can look to see if there are any concerns, not with your broad description, but with your actual plans.
Yeah, and maybe Dan, before you respond, just to add to that, completely agree with it. That's right where my head was at, which is perhaps there's a chicken and egg issue here where things need to progress based on consistency. And I understand that, but I actually would like to understand what exactly are we providing? Because if it's a letter saying like, this is probably consistent and here's what would be on our mind, I think that would work great. If somehow we are actually providing consistency, maybe we'd want to hear a little bit more about the thought process on that.
So I think it's more of the former. Like I said, the consistency is a predicate for the county to get its grant money from the state and the Fed. When I spoke with the county last week, one of the things they mentioned is that they're going to incorporate this consistency as part of the initial application, as opposed to after it's approved and waiting to get the grant funding. So it's still not going to be in a position to have actual plans and specifications. And again, this is, the project in itself is would essentially be a type 2. It's replacing existing infrastructure. It's not, normally if the village was undertaking a project like this, it probably would not require HCZM approval because of that. The special factor in this case is because it's of the grant money, which is the reason why you've had to look at Waverly Avenue and Post Road, because that's federal money that's coming to the agencies that are leading the project, not the project itself. It's really the money that's the predicate, the factor that causes it to require consistency.
Well,
So
what
that-
I want to drill down on that for a sec, Dan. Are either of these, is there no chance that either the residence upgrades or the sidewalks are going to be within a wetland buffer, or otherwise fall within the jurisdiction it usually causes planning send us for consistency?
So as far as the two private properties, I am not aware of what's entailed with that. I reviewed the funding plan for CDBG. I didn't see those projects in there. I can't recall if I can't recall if these grants were presented to the village at the CDBG public hearing that was held in 2018. I mean, that's part of the process. Is any project that is seeking grant funding in a municipality, that presentation has to be made to the local board. It could be that these are part of a larger county-wide project, which may be why they didn't necessarily come to the village individually. But as far as our projects, they are sidewalk projects. I know portions of Waverly Avenue, especially the more towards the western end by the river. I'm sure they're in the designated, the federally mapped floodplain. If I can recall the addresses of the other locations, we could find that out pretty easily. But I don't have any information on those projects, so I'm not going to speak out of turn on those.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't assume that they're coming for, they need consistency because they're CDBG money.
Yeah.
I wouldn't assume that they wouldn't have a consistency review anyway. We'd have
Okay.
to see the plans go through planning before we knew for sure whether they needed to come to us for consistency.
Yeah, we could certainly review that when we actually have some design plans. Like I said, we're already, this is a cycle of CDBG, which is, I don't think they've done anything yet. And we're 2 years into the 3-year cycle. So it's the CDBG program is not like it used to be. But like I said, what they're going to do with the next round is incorporate the consistency review as part of the application process, which unfortunately will leave you in the same situation, but you'll be aware of what's going on.
Chairman Burt, I think it sounds to me like we're creating a hypothetical then in our letter, is that, as long as none of the things appear are happening within the floodplain or wetland or anything that falls under our jurisdiction, then no plan review is needed. But if it does, then we will need a plan review. It's like it's hypothetical, all hypothetical.
Well, I think one of the things we could frame in the letter is that it's essentially a replacement in kind for both projects, and that if it deviates beyond that, additional review could be required.
Sidewalks are definitely in
Yeah.
place in kind.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in my opinion, we need to get this grant money for a good project, but at the same time, I think it puts us in an awkward spot if it asks us to say that a project is consistent without providing information, given the proximity to some of these rivers. So I mean, I'm willing to just sit back and see if people have a suggestion, but if we have to take action, at our next meeting with no more information than this, then I would think the letter would have to be crafted as, and maybe it would work for the grant folks or not, we don't know whether, and we could pose this a little better. We don't know whether this is consistent because we don't have all the details, but it very likely would be. We're supportive of the project as long as stormwater is addressed and construction practices, preserve the, are careful around the river. That, or at least that would be my opinion.
Yeah.
Would you like ACRF to take the lead on drafting the letter? We can certainly include language to that effect.
Yeah, okay. We'll go ahead and take a crack at it. And as soon as you have it ready, let's see.
Would Friday
should-
work?
Well, I do need to, this is also on
Yeah.
the agenda for the Board of Trustees for next week, just because of the time frame and that we have to get back to them by, and the board
They need it Monday.
meets once in December. There's a second meeting at the end just to pay bills, so we don't go into hock. with our-
Okay,
Yeah,
so.
I mean,
So you need the letter
Seamus
in
and-
advance of the
and
meeting
Martin-
then?
Yeah, Seamus and Martin have already taken on a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna say that me and Andrew will workshop this. So Ashley, if you can send a draft to me and Andrew, and we'll make any changes we want to make, and that way we'll have a letter that we can get to trustees before they meet on Monday.
Okay.
Andrew just turned his camera on.
All
to
right.
see what you were volunteering him for.
See what I volunteered him for.
I heard my
Well,
name.
you always give assignments to people who aren't there.
Yeah, that's how it works, isn't it?
Yep.
Encourage participation by making sure people get assignments when they're not participating. No, all right, so those are our two community development block grant items, and it's great that they are upgrading some affordable housing. Take a look at it, and I think that is all our administrative items.
Yeah.
So we've got two things to get moving for next time. We've got two things we got to write letters on, and we've got two things that will not appear on our meeting agenda because the ball is no longer in our court unless something happens between now and then.
Just one thing, Commissioner Burt, on the two on the affordable housing, that's not a village project, so that's in your bailiwick entirely. So just want to separate that from the other one.
Right. The sidewalks is a village project being funded by a CDBG, and
Yeah.
the other one is not a village project at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that the delineation is understood. Okay.
Okay. It's got, and for that reason, it should really be two different letters because two
Yeah.
different groups of people look at it.
So do we still have G, the 50-foot setback thing? Or-
Well,
We provided our guidance at real length, as did the other land use boards, by the way.
Right. So my question was going to be, do we need to remove that from the agenda?
I think we can take it off agenda. I don't know what else we would discuss about the 50-foot setbacks. That's with trustees right now.
Yeah, I agree.
They took that, and in case anyone missed it, after a thoughtful discussion, they took it back and decided to make some modifications. So that will come through again in a different version. Speaking from, I think we were all of one mind that it was fundamentally either a planning or harbor coastal issue, and not a zoning issue, and that appears to have been significantly persuasive to the trustees. So we're gonna get something that looks a little different in how it functions from the one that we reviewed.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying for the agenda for the next meeting,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be on there. Same as
It doesn't need to
same
appear
as the
on.
three
Ball
others.
is not in our court on that.
And then,
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Martin. We don't need to do that.
And with apologies to backtracking for one thing, I know we're not going to dwell on it, but just we went very quickly past the wetland ordinance only because I think, Thomas, you're planning to take a look at it. I do just want to point out, just in case the next week is helpful at all, that Doreen had a couple of comments that I think are accurate, that what we have is still a document that at least doesn't work in one very technical way, which is that there's a definition for like wetlands, water course buffer or something, and it's just not in there. So if any aspect of us ultimately trying to culminate our long battle with that ordinance is just having a complete document, I don't think we have one. I do think from my perspective, I have nothing new to add on my review of the document and the essence of it or the function of it. It's just more of a technical point there. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, I saw Doreen's comment. I noted the drop definition. That's on my list. All right, so I think that's through our administrative items. Several of us have stuff to do. We got some letters to write, Ashley also. And thank you very much. I think at this time, unless somebody's got new business that we can deal with in a work session and not a public hearing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
You've been great, folks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.